all. I want to warm up the discussion by basically starting with a panel-wide question to each and every one of you about the impact of COVID on your organization. You go as broad as possible or as narrow as possible within your division, within your activities, and also its impact on your project. So we can give our attendees a sense of what has this crisis impacted the practitioners in this field. So I could start with you, Alan.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Joseph. Look, the Center for Global Development is a development think tank. We're not a funder. We don't fund development like the World Bank, but we do have quite close relationships with many development agencies. And many of our research programs are in areas which are very much affected by COVID. It includes public health, for example, migration, vulnerable populations, refugees, and the use of digital technology, the governance of digital technology, including in the area of payments. So what we've seen is quite a big shift in our work, not so much in terms of the areas, but in terms of the way the areas are focused, turning them towards the particular issues relating to COVID right now. For example, on digital technology, we began about 10 or 11 years ago to work on the development applications.
Thank you so much. There's a component of the platform which also takes.
Sorry, I'm hearing.
Where is that coming from?
I'm hearing an echo, Joseph.
Yes, I think it's coming from somewhere else, but please continue. And just make sure there are no audio that's being run.
Okay, so in our work, for example, we began looking at the developmental uses of identity, particularly digital identity. We're also very proud to be founding members of ID for Africa as well, like Robert. And our work has been in the area of payments, payment systems most recently, and the developmental impact of different payment systems, including for financial inclusion and women's empowerment. And so when COVID came along, this was a big change because, first of all, I mean, there was a massive new demand for social protection and payment systems. These systems have been under stress. It's a very important time to learn about the capabilities and how to optimize them. And so our program shifted around from looking at these longer term development issues towards looking at the immediate present. What is happening in countries? How are systems being implemented? What can we learn from the experience of different countries? So within our own program, we shifted. We're not able to do field studies right now, which we had planned to do, but we have worked towards trying to assist the learning agenda going forward, including through developing with the World Bank a new website. So this has been the nature of our work. Thank you.
Yeah, we're going to drill down into very specific topics that you've raised, but it's interesting to note that the field work has been interrupted. However, the studies have shifted from long-term considerations to respond to an immediate demand and need. We're going to come back to that. Hold on that thought. Vyjayanti?
So in terms of just the way we work first, you know, we are a global institution, so I do think we were pretty much accustomed to working remotely and virtual teams, but we've been completely all working from home since mid-March or towards end of March. Work has been even busier than normal. You know, the pandemic has caused an unprecedented crisis, as everyone knows. And the expectation is that for a global recession, that'll be nothing that we've seen since World War II. And so the World Bank has responded more broadly. I can talk a little bit about ID perhaps later, but more broadly as an institution, the World Bank has responded with support to over 100 some countries, $160 billion in a 15-month time span. Of that, about $10 billion is to provide cash assistance to those who are the most vulnerable and the neediest, and ensuring that it's the right beneficiaries that receive those cash assistance, both to deal with the economic shocks and to have immediate income for immediate food and necessary items. And so in terms of just the overall agenda of ID, I think it's become even more important. We've seen countries realize that if they have the right foundational ID systems and the other digital foundations like digital payment systems in place, they would be able to get this cash assistance to people fast, with accuracy, reliability. And so many countries, and I can give some examples, but perhaps you want me to go into that later. Yeah. But so I think the agenda there's a real light now on the digital ID agenda, particularly because countries have seen how when these systems and other digital foundations are in place, they are able to get support to the neediest.
That's great. So let's limit the remarks to the impact on the operations of the organization, and then we can come into the subject of impact on the domains and the practices. Dr. Songwe, thanks, Vyjayanti.
Thank you very much. I think we've had a twofold impact. One is that I think everybody will agree, for some strange reason, we're working a lot. Yes. It seems as if this platforms have allowed us now to not be able to say I can't travel or there was no flights, because somehow or the other you're connected to something, or it's either Zoom or Teams or WebEx or something. So I think that's the first thing. Is we've seen a lot of tension within the institution because people feel that they're working a lot more. Productivity has gone up, I think, as well. I think that those who work more have become more obvious. Secondly, I think the second thing that we've seen is a little bit more focus on the work that we're doing, because there is this sort of a need to do a couple of things in a sort of more systematic and more deep dive. We're reaching out more. We're doing this more often because we can do this now. We're reaching out to many more people than we would have before, and I think that's helping us build new partnerships. I think that what this has done for us, at least, is we've gotten a huge sort of slew of new partnerships that we're now working with. We used to work with civil society, but not as much. And now there's a lot of work happening with civil society, which for us is very good because it sort of helps us reach out, particularly on our governance agenda. So I think if I were to talk about two things, one, internally, it's just been the amount of work that we have, more people working longer hours. And then in terms of the collaborative platforms, they've clearly expanded.
Excellent, really positive side effects. Cornelius?
So for us, actually, yes, it's been disruptive, but we've quickly swung into action. And like our colleagues are saying, intensive working, we have treated this as a crisis. In our organization, this has been given a level 3 emergency tagging so that we could move faster. The disruption had meant that we had to focus. What we are doing, especially for child protection, is focusing on the most vulnerable population and ensuring that these populations are not left behind. Advocating that they're part of the socio-economic framework for response in the UN and all the national response plans. We are intensely advocating. We are working more and more with collaborative platforms. I've never seen such great collaboration before. It's intense, okay, pulling all the different parts of the UN together and the civil society and the development community. We have been able to overcome the humanitarian development nexus, so we don't know which one is fragile and which one is development. All countries are affected, from Asia, high income to low income. The one challenge we have is the state to deliver. We're having challenges maintaining a staff in the field and having access to the population.
Understood. Excellent. Robert? Audio.
Sorry. So you see my background today is the skyline of Bangkok, where I was supposed to have been now. I moved there at the end of last year and happened to be in Washington when all of this happened. And I've been here ever since. So I'm not actually in Bangkok. I'm actually in DC. And as a result, you know, we have a lot of, I work a lot on Asia and globally. So we have a lot of late nights with these type of workshops on virtual workshops and so on. As everybody's saying, it's probably the most I've worked, I think the longest hours since the beginning of my career 25 years ago. And it's been very rewarding work. I agree with Vera that the productivity seems for many people that I work with to have gone up. That being said, I'm wondering how much of it is the way we work versus the urgency of the work, because what I've really seen is just all the timelines have been compressed so much, and that has created, I see it, a lot of opportunities to get things moving that would have taken a year or 2 years or 3 years. Things in the realm of digital payments and ID, which we'll talk about, that have been sped up because of the urgency of the situation. And it's also, you know, shined a light on how important it was to have these systems in place and how necessary it is to move very quickly. So yeah, I'll stop there.
Thanks, Robert. Niall?
So very practically, I think we have seen, like many organizations, situations now, because everyone is working from home, you're questioning these enormous rents that we are paying for buildings in cities like New York and in other cities as well. And of course, many staff asking, would that money not be better spent now in the program countries? Also things like internal procedures that require, for example, signatures and scanning documents. It's just not possible when staff are working from home. But when administrators and senior management say we just need flexible solutions in COVID, that takes time to trickle down where people at the bottom are empowered to actually ignore things like requiring signatures, etc. We've had very practical internal debates, a lot of tension around things like whether staff should have cameras on or not during meetings. And it's become quite a gendered discussion, frankly. We have a lot of pushback from people saying, I don't want you to see my children running around. I don't want you to see my apartment that I live in. But you have a lot of managers instructing staff, no, put your camera on when you're on the Zoom call. Small little things like that, but at a much more strategic, broader level. I think when you deal with a donor like DFID, for example, a large donor like DFID that says that we want to maintain our development aid budget at 0.7% or whatever percent that they've hit. Not only do they not want it to go down, they also don't want it to go up. And if the UK economy suffers then, and if the overall GDP figures go down, that means their DFID development budget goes down by the same amount. And we are suffering now in a lot of programs, for example, where we were expecting DFID funding, it is not now forthcoming. And not only that type of an effect, but the other effects where donors are simply saying, no matter what we had promised to fund you for the next 2 or 3 years, everything now is COVID. Everything has to shift to COVID and everything has to adapt to COVID. And while that's good in terms of raising money for direct COVID response, it's not good for other programs that you may be implementing that suddenly are short of money that they expected to be able to move forward over the next couple of years.
Excellent. So you could see, I mean, with 6 different agencies, you could see the range of impact that COVID has had on the operations of these agencies. Some of it is positive, some of it is negative, some of it is uncertain. We don't know yet what the outcome of this is going to be, but it's clear that every organization, including ID for Africa, I mean, we are here in this family together on a different medium. We're adapting to deal with the crisis, but we're also adapting to deal with the new normals. Actually,